afternoon, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of my special report on the Upper Grand District School Board, racism, and problem solving with this board. And this is the episode that ties together the theory that what they're presenting to the Board of Trustees at the June 16 meeting, how that cascades into your child's classroom or into the classrooms, period. And I'll show you a couple of examples from the June 16th meeting and from the new policy. I was going to do a really long video comparing the two policies because they're starkly different. They're very different. I may still do this video that compares the policies because it's worth noting how different they are and what the focus is that they focus on. But the scope of this video is showing you how this fits in to your child's classroom. So I'm going to stay focused first. But what are we talking about? I was concerned about this. I heard this in the June 16th meeting to the board trustees. Here we go.
That because the systems were all developed by folks who were white, that they are inherently racist in that. And so
how could a board of education say to a child, by virtue of your skin color, anything that you create is inherently racist? And sorry about that, but could you complete this project anyway? It'll be racist, and we all know it'll be racist, but could you complete it anyway? I think that's incorrect. I think that is absolutely abhorrent for a board of education, Well, I tried to solve the problem. And when I tried to solve the problem, the superintendent in charge of inclusivity and equity says, I've seen it. Thank you. Best to tell staff to ignore him. Really? I don't think ignoring me is a good idea. How does this all fit in? Okay. Here is the Upper Grand's website, and the most up-to-date information that I've got is here's the board improvement plan, the BIPSA. Okay. And this is a yearly piece of paper that is put out by the board. And here is the link to the BIPSA. And the BIPSA is, it's the Board Improvement Plan for Student Achievement 2019 to 2020. And it's split into two quadrants, one left, one right. On the left-hand quadrant, it's got promote well-being, and the goal is to develop children and students who have strong relationships and positive sense of self, and to support the whole child, cognitive, emotional, social, and physical well-being. And on the right-hand side, it says ensuring equity, goal to ensure all students will be inspired to reach their full potential with access to rich learning experiences. Now, it is my opinion, hold on. So on this document, if you go to under actions, the bullet point says using data in Indigenous histories and contemporary realities to develop goals and strategies for the 3-year equity plan. That's where the 3-year equity plan fits in. That's this being updated to this. This is the 3-year equity plan. You'll also note that this is a 2-year plan, 2017 to 19 for the 3-year plan, but that's details we'll get to in just a minute. Okay, so that's how this fits in. And this 3-year equity plan, it says, carrying on, to increase the understanding of our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students' needs and to develop goals and strategies for the bullying prevention plan and safe, equitable, and inclusive school strategy. So the way this makes it into your child's classroom is this is referenced on the board improvement plan. The board improvement plan references the 3-year plan, and the bully prevention and safe, equitable, and inclusive schools reference the 3-year plan. And so when you go to fill out as a teacher or as somebody who's filling this out, administration, vice principal, principal, and there's a list of people, you get this from the board. This is from the Upper Grand website, and it's a template. And there are some problematic things within this template, and we'll get into that. It's unsurprisingly is what I meant. It's about lacking definitions, right? Inequities. What are inequities? Could you describe it? Bias is described. There's a whole bunch of definitions we've got. But anyway, the people filling this out would come here and they'd fill in their names, right? So they'd fill out their names of the teacher, and they'd fill in the information for their school here, and they'd check the boxes here. But these are the parts that are not concerning necessarily, but concerning enough. The school bullying prevention and equity and inclusivity goals, and this is filled in by those same people. And the bullying prevention and equity and inclusivity education programs and activities, etc. Okay, so here is how to get to the new one. Here's the link. right? This is the safe and equitable and inclusive schools. I don't know if they just didn't know about the other thing or what, or if it's not updated yet. I don't know. But this is the new one. New one here, old one here. Here's some definitions, because this was Equity and Inclusive Education Procedures Manual, 504A. And they understand that definitions are important. The Upper Grand District School Board gets that, and they define a whole bunch of language here. They've got bias defined, an opinion, preference, prejudice, or inclination that limits an individual or a group's ability to make fair, objective, and accurate judgments. But they don't have a bunch of other very important terms defined for no reason at all. Right? And they're using these terms in plans like the 3-year equity plan and the new one too. And I'll show you. Well, here's where it starts to get a little bit complicated, because I can show you the comparison of these plans, and the comparison is stark when you start to look at it. Or I can show you how these plans influence the language in your school. Okay, I'm gonna show you how they influence the language in the kids' schools, and then I'm gonna come back and show you the difference in the plans. I was just checking the time there, so I apologize if my face got too close. Okay, how do they fit in here? Okay, so these bullying sheets are filled out and then posted online. So here's GCVI. This is a high school in Guelph, and because it's a template, inequities appears in all of them, right? This top line is the same for everyone. So I'll read it here from the template and show you that it exists at the GCVI and the rest. It says, everyone at our school is committed to making our school a safe, inclusive, and equitable environment for all. We treat each other with respect, and we will refuse to tolerate inequities in any form at our school. We know that a whole school approach where all stakeholders are involved in supporting our student helps create and maintain a positive school climate. I want to briefly talk about we will not tolerate inequities. During the 2016 or the June 16th meeting, and I think it's here, not there. Yeah, during the June 16th meeting, they're talking about changing the philosophy of how to train kids. It used to be a passive, they would be taught to be kind, right? Like, be nice to other kids, but if another kid's being XYZ, then they can be whatever they want to be, and you be what you want to be, basically. And now they're changing that to pushing some activism. Here's Jessica Roden. Sorry, terrible with names. I apologize, but I mean, everybody who watches me knows that. Jessica Roden, and listen to what she says about a shift in how they're educating the kids. Right? Here we go.
Intentional in the language, in the naming, in the focus, and to move us from perhaps, if I may, areas of comfort around being kind people who give back, people who are considerate, into people who are incredibly intentionally thoughtful and action-oriented in making change.
Instead of teaching kids to be kind, we're going to make them action-oriented to making change. That's at 29:30 in the June 16th meeting. Is that what I don't want my kid turned into an Antifa militant. Thank you very much. Keep your garbage outside of the classroom that my kid's in. Thanks. However, that doesn't appear to be possible. Okay. So here's King George. I was going to inequities, wasn't I? Right. So here's King George showing the same thing. And I'll go back to my point about undefined language. We've got bias defined in the Equity and Inclusive Education Procedures Manual. We've got bias defined. We've got a whole bunch of definitions. We've got a whole section on definitions, but we don't have inequities defined. And there's other words in here that are not defined as well. And very quickly, just even at the top here, under support, well, they don't have oppression and racism defined either. You'd think that would be important. You'd think that would be important, right? Like, here's the handbook. Racism, oppression, it's not there. It's not there. And yet it forms the cornerstone of the actions, but it's undefined. And they say obtain awareness under support, obtain awareness resources in needed areas, anti-oppressive language, anti-racism, both of those are undefined. White privilege, undefined. Homophobia, classism. What are they planning on teaching the kids? It's incredible. Okay, back to here's the real life GCVI again. Again, in this document, they understand the importance of defining terms, definition of bullying, cyberbullying, examples of bullying. They go through definitions painstakingly. And yet, at the important definitions, the important things that you can really have a conversation about, they do not. Okay, parents, community communication, and outreach strategies. This is the part of the form that the person filling out the form would do for would actually fill out, right? So here's the GCVI one. It says, we will communicate our bullying prevention and equity and inclusivity strategies and initiatives by, and I'm just going to read the highlighted ones, integrating bullying prevention and equity and inclusion into classroom instructions. They're clearly stating it. We will use this in classroom instruction. Okay? Clear, that is as plain as day. And it may seem kind of like not a big reveal, like, oh, but they say it directly. They are using this in classroom instruction. Undefined language and all. Back to this. Informing parents and school volunteers of procedures for reporting incidents of bullying and inequity. School bullying prevention and equity and inclusivity goals, support staff in addressing issues of equity and inclusion through classroom instruction. Again, they're in classroom instruction discussing equity and inclusion. Bullying prevention. Our school currently implements or will implement the following bully prevention and equity and inclusivity education programs and activities that focus on developing healthy relationships and provide leadership opportunities for our students. Character education initiatives. Character education initiatives. I haven't heard that before. Character education initiatives. That's new. That's interesting. That's notable. And it's on more than one. There's student leadership and mentoring, student success, social skills and healthy lifestyle, that's CYC, but less important. Scroll down here. Reporting incidents of bullying. When responding to a bullying incident, our school staff use a progressive discipline approach. Use of progressive discipline approach. A discipline supports a safe, inclusive, and accepting learning and teaching environment in which every student can reach his or her full potential. Strategies may range from early intervention to more intensive intervention in cases of persistent bullying, with possible referral to board support personnel, community, or social service agencies. These may include, but are not limited to, character development strategies and programs, restorative justice practices, written or verbal apology, community service. Restorative justice quickly turned into social justice when I was working actively in schools. We had restorative justice, and then all of a sudden people were calling it social justice as if it was an interchangeable term, which was interesting. Okay, this is the King George one, and see, it says the same thing. Everyone at our school is committed to making schools safe, inclusive, and equitable, all undefined, for all. We refuse to tolerate inequities, and they're going to make kids act and be more active in action, right? Instead of being passively kind. Thank you. They can be passively kind. I think that's much better. Okay, here is parents, communities. This is the part where they fill in. I'm just going to highlight again. This is a different school, so different people, different words. But it's the same. Parent, community, communication, and outreach strategies. We will communicate our bullying prevention, equity, and inclusivity strategies and initiatives by integrating bullying and prevention and equity and inclusion into classroom instruction. They are teaching it directly. Where does it say that in the curriculum? Informing parents and school volunteers of procedures for reporting incidents of bullying and inequality at the November school council meeting, assisting parents to build awareness and knowledge so they may support our school bullying prevention and equity and inclusive strategies, bullying prevention and equity and inclusive strategies, education programs and activities. This is what's happening in the school. It says increase student awareness of issues that may negatively impact others. Continue the implementation of character education, including incorporating Indigenous ways of knowing through grandfather teachings. What's character education? Exactly, specifically, what is it? Because I have no idea. Number 5, increase students' demonstration of their knowledge of our character ed plan through daily actions. What's character education? Anybody at King George, if you can comment in the comments, I would love to know what character education is. If you don't know, I'd love to know that you don't know. Back to this. Bullying prevention and equity and inclusive education programs and activities. Our school currently implements or will implement the following bullying prevention and equity and inclusive education programs and activities that focus on developing healthy relationships and provide leadership opportunities for our students. Number 2, character ed monthly assemblies and intergrade buddy activities to build relationships through the school. Use transformative learning community activities at staff meetings and in class meetings. What are transformative learning community activities? Demonstrate conflict resolution, positive character traits, and executive functioning strategies at monthly assemblies, as well as through the school Twitter feed, on the Front Foyer TV, and through announcements. Encourage use of gold slips to counter the focus on blue slips, and develop a system for celebrating students who have earned a gold slip. I have no idea what the gold slips are either, but it sounds insidious. It sounds institutionalized. I worked at an institution. I definitely know. And here is Taylor Evans. I thought this was just funny. They've got in their plan, and this is, as far as I know, the up-to-date plan, by the way. Participate in Me to We programs and initiatives. Read the news, guys. Update your website. My goodness. Okay, but anyway, here's the filling in their own parts. Integrating bullying and prevention and equity and inclusion into the classroom instruction, posting our bullying prevention plan and safe and equitable school strategy on our school website, informing parents and school volunteers, procedures for reporting incidents of bullying and inequality, assisting parents to build awareness and knowledge so they may support our school bullying prevention and equality inclusive strategies, character education assemblies. What is character education and what are character education assemblies? I think that isn't that my job as a parent to build the character of my children? I think that that's a very, very strange thing. Okay, so we're 15 minutes in. All right, well, thanks for making it through that. I'm going to go through and compare these two policies now because I think that we've got time, and I don't want to do a whole other video because I think that this is pretty much encapsulates it. This is really, really concerning. It's very concerning. This 3-year plan, I'm going to go through it really quick. This one seems reasonable. I think the best way to go through it is for me to just read it this way and then go and look at the new plan and read it this way and go through it because, and then I've got one more clip to show you about them talking about grade 3 trips and why we should do those grade 3 trips just because, we always do those trips. That's called a tradition. Why are our traditions not being respected by these new woke equity inclusivity leaders? But first. So that's the next 10 minutes or so. It'll take me about 10 minutes, probably. 10 minutes? 10 minutes. Okay. 10 minutes. Here we go. 3-year equity plan. And remember, this is a part of the board improvement plan. Okay, the goal is to ensure students are inspired to reach their full potential and to develop children and students who have strong relationships and a positive sense of self and to support the whole child, right? So like the purpose here is the child. We're not on a witch hunt for racism. That more goes for this one than this one, okay? This one actually does a pretty good job. There's still some concerning stuff in here, but way less concerning stuff than in this one. Okay, here we go, part 2, because I might as well. Should I stop it? No, I'm not going to stop it. I'll just keep going. Okay, 3-year equity plan, 2017 to 19. That's a 2-year plan. 2, not 3. 2-year equity plan in lieu of 3-year plan. Okay, anyway. At the top, it says strengthen inclusive and culturally responsive and relevant teaching, curriculum, assessment, and resources. I'm just going to go through the goal and the actions. I'm not going to talk much about the strategies and outcomes. It's a little bit dry, okay, but it's worth it. Promise. I promise. Okay. So the first goal is schools and classrooms are inclusive, safe, and welcoming for all students. They complete yearly equity walks, provide learning resources, and create Google Doc of equity curriculum, okay? The second one is professional development is focused on equity, inclusion, and human rights, and they say they provide professional development for teachers and administrators on bias, stereotypes, and racism. Again, racism is not defined in their documents. That's a problem. That's concerning, right? They provide a variety of opportunities to engage educators in equity and inclusive education. Again, not defined. So that's a problem. There's problems with this document too, but regardless, it's a much better document than the new one. The third point for this one says professional development opportunities and resources are differentiated, align the work in equity and inclusion with First Nations, Métis, Inuit, curriculum, and special education plans. So that's all talking to this overarching goal of strengthening inclusive and culturally responsive and relevant teaching. Okay, and the next one, support student pathway choices. I think this is a great goal. All students are supported in achieving their maximum potential and choosing appropriate pathways to work, college, apprenticeship, or university. Identify and examine systemic barriers that limit students' ability to achieve and pursue their chosen pathway after graduation. Recruit, hire, and retain a diverse qualified teaching profession. This is at least since 2016 that they've been doing this. Okay, so this is, or 2017, excuse me. But even before that, this is part of the language. Like this is part of a document like this and has been for a long time. And if you have a student who is destined for university, then you prep them for university. If you have a student who is destined to be a laborer or somebody who's working in a factory, by their choice, not by your choice, not by the guidance counselor's choice or anything to that effect, but if they're saying, listen, like this is where I want to go with my life and this is kind of what I'm thinking, then your job is to help them and prep them. I think this goal is really good. It's absent from the new one, and that's unfortunate. They threw this one out entirely. They started fresh. The third one is address suspension, expulsion, and exclusion rates. Gather data on suspensions, expulsions, and exclusions, and on groups affected, collect, analyze, and report on suspension, expulsion, and exclusion data, provide additional supports to schools where racialized issues are increasing, train staff on positive preventative measures for addressing student behavior, using the support bias-free progressive discipline in schools seen here. So thing is, they've been looking for bias and racism since at least 2017, and they still haven't found it. And now they're going on a hunt for it, a witch hunt for it. Back to this number 4, I guess. Develop a consistent approach to the collection and application of voluntary provided student identity data, collect and analyze and report on voluntary provided student data. And this is gathering information. I'm not going to go through this. It's a little dry. The last one is increase parent and community engagement in equity and inclusive education. They don't want my input. They're doing everything they can to shut me up, despite my request to be included in the steering committee and included in conversations going forward. Everything they can. Back to this. Parents and guardians and other community members are valued as important resources in creating and maintaining inclusive and equitable school communities. Until the new, so we're done on the first one. I think that there's a few issues with that, but overall, much better. Here's the new one. Okay, this is 2019 to 2022. And at the top, it says, identify and name bias, oppression, and racism through reflection, evidence, voice, feedback, and data. It says actions. Identify individual and interpersonal bias, oppression, and racism. I say again, they have guidelines for this. They have defined terms in a handbook, and they don't even have a working document. Like, I don't mind if the document hasn't been updated in a few years, but if the document hasn't been updated in a few years, you'd think you'd have a working document, an interim document that says racism defined, oppression defined, male toxicity, or toxic masculinity, male toxicity, toxic masculinity defined. No, they don't have anything, or they're unwilling to share it, one or the other. Anyway, regardless, it's very, very, very poor. Anyway, these terms are undefined. Bias is the only defined term in this. Analyze the data that they've got, which should be a lot, but is not showing any racism that they themselves said that in the June 16th meeting. Support, obtain awareness and resources in needed areas like, again, undefined anti-oppressive language, anti-racism, undefined, white privilege, undefined. Identify systems, oppression, and gaps. And they go through and they're analyzing, hold on, let me review. So they're analyzing the board diversity survey data, the equity walks. They say who does not participate in school trips and graduation trips and why. Board policies through an equity lens, practice and services provided by vendors to the board, report cards and pathways data, suspension and expulsion rates, hiring practice and gaps in diverse staff representation in all positions. Review requests for prayer rooms, accessibility needs, anti-Black racism learning training, anti-oppression learning training, Black brilliance, positive history supports and events, gender neutral inclusive washrooms, anti-racism learning training, trip costs and fee considerations, increase communication and transparency of equity initiatives. And the next one says build collaborative relationships, identify and support student organized clubs and groups, Black chapters, Black student unions, gay straight alliances, inclusion, equity, social justice clubs, and student trustees request from student groups, increase communication and transparency with staff, student, family, guardians, and community. Board-supported communication tools such as school messengers, school websites, Twitter, board website, non-web-based approaches such as local newspapers to ensure all members of Upper Grand District School Board and community partners are aware of equity initiatives. Well, I hope I'm helping in this initiative, everyone. You're welcome. Back to this. Collaborate with Upper Grand District School Board departments. Required learning, training, and support in anti-Black racism, anti-racism, and anti-oppression, all undefined, to all staff in all departments, all undefined. Participate in work community agencies, value working with a variety of community resources and people with lived experience in all geographical areas of the board. Reciprocate, okay, I'm not going to read the rest of that. Moving down into address and educate with accountable practices and policies, building required learning, training, and anti-racism, anti-Black racism, and anti-oppression through the board. Scroll down. Eliminate bias, oppression, and racism through disruption and action. I know I'm long today, and I hope that thank you for sticking with me. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of what I wanted to talk about. They want to disrupt, and a whole list of things here, but they speak about disrupting trips specifically and sports. Here it says access to sports programs and trips due to socioeconomic status, sex, gender, and ability. They reference this up here as well, talking about seeing who's included in trips and who's not. And this has been not fixed, but addressed by a lot of schools up until this school year, regardless. But here is Jessica Roden talking about disrupting trips. Here we go.
I'd like to add to that as well, and just say an example that came to my mind when you were sharing that, Trustee Bustiel, was around some of the legacy and the practices with school trips. And so what happens when a teacher says, well, we've always gone on this trip in grade 3 and we go because we always have. And who does that include? Who does it not include, who's not attending, who's not going. And that's some of the evidence and the data that we would like to also continue to assess as we move forward in our plan. So thank you for that reminder.
I'm heavily involved in schools, and my family is heavily involved. I do the FSLAC because the French language meetings, because my wife does the school board meetings. And I know exactly how much work goes into making sure everybody who wants to attend trips can attend and nobody's left out. But they're using the equity rules to shut down the ability to have trips, or to say to certain teachers, like, this isn't appropriate to continue to have a trip, or something to that effect. And I think that that's a very, very slippery slope. It's a very, very, very concerning move to start demanding that trips be stopped because of people who may not be able to access them. They say directly that they want to disrupt the action to eliminate bias, oppression, and racism is to disrupt access to sports and programs and trips due to no data at all. No data at all. The last thing I'll leave you with, and I was right about 10 minutes. Ha ha ha. Okay, the last thing I'll leave you with is I attended the June 24th meeting, and I like to record. I make audio recordings because I like to reference them when I'm saying this was said, because I make notes too. But I like to make an audio recording because if I think somebody said something, it's better to be able to listen to it again. So I make audio recordings of meetings that I attend. So I attended this meeting on the 24th of June. And at the end of this meeting, Jessica Roden says that they're going to disrupt, and they're committed to this. And, well, I'll let her speak for herself. I'm not going to show any video or anything to that effect. This is just Jessica Roden. And this is what she said at the end of this June 24th meeting. This is concerning because it has real impact on your child's classroom, not just in character training, whatever that is, not just in character assemblies, but in access to trips, due to somebody's unwillingness to look at the data that has been collected since at least 2017, at the fact that a whole bunch of this stuff is undefined, and they're being celebrated. These people who are trying to shut this stuff down, they're being celebrated as if they're bringing equity. They're not bringing equity. They are not bringing equity. They are disrespecting the traditions and the good work that has been done by this board up until now. Up until a few years ago, because a few years ago, things in education went completely bonkers. And that's why I left. I promise. I was in the classrooms and I loved it. I was very good at working with children. Very good, believe it or not. But the policies went crazy. Here's Jessica Roden.
And
I already did that for you.
Oh, thanks, Glenda.
Gotcha.
And thank you so much for everything. And we will, I can tell you right now, the 3 adult faces in front of you are dedicated to be disruptors, to educate ourselves and others, and to move action forward in our board. And we all
don't put that in the notes though.
all of us have children in this board right now or recently, and we are living here, and we are absolutely dedicated to this work.
I'll let you know as well. It's a Zoom meeting, right? There's like 10 people on the screen. There's one child, and there's a couple of people who are icons, right? Like they don't have their video camera on, but there's more than 3 adult faces. So she says the 3 adult faces in the room. How, like, the arrogance of these people is absolutely beyond the pale. There is clear problems with the definitions for basic terms used in this plan. And plan, you can use the term very loosely. Please go through it. I've done a very 30,000 foot, maybe 10,000 foot look at this, but there's more in here, and it is very, very concerning. I know this is long. I thought maybe we'd be short. I could have stopped it after 16 minutes. I'm just talking now. I apologize. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll update you if anything else happens. I think that we'll see. I've got some things pending, waiting to hear back, so we'll see. I'm certainly not done. Thanks for watching. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadasReport.co. And if you want to help, talk to these people. Hold these people accountable. When they say, don't worry, it's not impacting the classroom, it is impacting the classroom. You can follow the paper trail. I hope that I've shown you how. All the links are here, right? BIPSA for the old one, this one for the new one. This impacts. The links are direct here for the Upper Grants Bullying Prevention Plan, and then you can show some examples of what's on these plans, what's concerning. Have some questions. Ask them, what is character education? Why are you still using me to we, Taylor Evans Public School? Ask questions. Ask questions. These people work for you. Call them. Hold them accountable. Say, what are you talking about? What is white supremacy? Can you define it? Because I see on your equity inclusive education procedures manual, that's not defined. White supremacy. What is that exactly? Specifically, if we're going to use it and if we're going to educate people about it, we should maybe define it, eh? What's toxic masculinity? These people being in these positions are not helpful. Thank you for watching.